Today I have the most amazing guest ever. This is Chelsea Howe from Sunblink. She is the Chief Product Officer at Hello Kitty Island Adventure, and she agreed to answer our questions. I have some questions for her, and I asked you what you want to ask her, and she's going to answer. Yay! My first question is, where is Milk?
And is that the question we should be asking?
I don't
I
know.
think we'll figure out about that a little bit quite
One,
soon.
1.8.5 maybe, or will it get closer to knowing, hopefully?
I think 1.8.5 and the Friendship Festival might unlock a very critical piece of the puzzle.
Amazing. You
Yes.
heard it first. So
Anyone who's into story should be incredibly excited about 1.8.5.
I think that I will have to go into the wild speculation. Oh, you said there will be a spoiled milk specific channel too?
Yep, starting with 1.8.5, there's going to be some big story beats that are, on par with the big challenges reveal that we had kind of early on in the game. So we want to make sure that everyone gets to experience that storyline at their own pace and when they want to. So we'll be trying to put conversation about some of those major story aspects into their own channel so that the community can freak out if they're there and not get spoiled if they're not.
So take your vacations, guys, because you need to live in the Discord for the next few weeks at the start of August, I guess. Okay, so let's start with the real questions. How is it to work with part of the team on site in Colorado and the rest? I heard a lot of you guys are scattered all around the place. Is it difficult to not meet in person? And tell us about the culture at Sunblink.
I absolutely love it. I live in Austin, Texas. There's two other Sunblinkers who also live around Austin. We occasionally kind of get together and have our own little chat about local happenings. Same with HQ in Boulder. We've got about half the team in Boulder. They get together in person. There's an in-person office, but we function entirely remotely. So all of our meetings are handled through Zoom. We use Slack for all of our messaging. We have our own Sunblink Discord where we do, live play tests and reviews and feedback sessions and stuff like that. And it's been incredibly fun to work with people who are super dedicated, super talented, super smart, and able to just knock things out of the park, even without that kind of extra layer of social tissue that being in person creates.
Cool. And so do you manage to still have fun times, like water cooler moments virtually, or?
Yeah, we have a happy hour that happens every Friday, a little late for my time zone, so I usually can't make it. But we also do occasional in-person events. So we had a big in-person launch party in Colorado after the game came out on arcade. And we're planning to do those, kind of every 18 months-ish, just because it is great to have the team kind of together in person. And then, of course, the leadership team meets up in person a little bit more frequently than that, just to talk about longer-term strategy and kind of nail things down in person when, the conversation is just a little bit easier and you can go and take breaks and have lunch and all of that kind of, again, fun, connective social tissue work.
So you've been releasing updates at crazy rate of every 6 weeks. And honestly, I'm worried for you guys' sanity. I know that you've been working on live services games before. Was the whole team prepared to this stress of constantly putting out new stuff? And how are you guys surviving it so far after a year?
We're trying. So a lot of people had, like you said, background in live services, right? I, started in live services on the Farmville game on Facebook, where updates happen multiple times a week. So depending on, where folks were from, they were more or less expectant of the pace that we were going to have to set once we went live. I think the biggest thing that we found out was that we couldn't do just 6-week updates because we started to see kind of attrition and fall off after about 4 weeks. So you'll notice that the first 3 to 4 months that we were live, we did just the 6-week updates. Then starting around December, we started to see those fall offs at around the 4-week mark. And we said, okay, we need to have these .5s, right? And those, what we've been doing was, trying to get both the .0 and the .5 work done for the .0 release. And then .5 was basically a cosmetic update where we unlocked the .5 event, changed, the title screen, changed the icon, and released a bunch of new marketing assets. As we tried to continue to make events sort of new and interesting, we did a lot of experimentation with our .5 events. And that, of course, added to the technical and design bandwidth required for them. So we wound up not sticking to our guns and doing all of the work for .0. So now we're actually almost on an every 3 to 4 week update schedule. And that's something we consider a bit of an internal failure. Our team's definitely feeling it. And we're hoping to, get back on track and be able to actually finish all of our .5 work within a .0 release, so that we won't have to have any design or tech overhead when we just push the button to unveil the .5 event. We're making strides towards that. We've started working with additional outside partners in terms of getting more QA bandwidth, getting QA that can kind of help us overnight and do some of the work of just trying to push and poke and prod on quality. The game is also just enormous. We've been releasing so much content. The world itself is huge. Like, you don't see the kind of world that Friendship Island is in other cozy games, right?
Right.
And so continuing to support the low-end devices iOS and Apple Arcade supports has been a work of pretty significant, labor and effort. And so we wound up losing some of our engineering efforts to just trying to maintain and trying to optimize. A lot of the optimization work requires going deep into our core systems, which is why in the last update or two, you've seen some really wonky bugs and been like, how did that happen? And the answer is that, we're doing a lot of this optimization work to improve how the game performs on devices. And that has to touch these very deep systems. And due to the size of the game, sometimes that manifests in ways that even we didn't, kind of anticipate happening.
Since you're going to now port the game to even more platforms than now, because you said that you already have to support iOS and macOS and a few like that. So now there's a lot more platforms. So do you plan to get a bigger team, or will you not need as many more engineers, but maybe more people to test or things like that? So what are your plans for the team?
All of the main team's work is on the core game. Anything that happens on specific other platforms, we tend to work with partners who are specialized in that platform, how to optimize for it, and kind of all of that. Whereas our focus is on kind of the vision for the game, the content of the game, the core systems and functionality of the game. When it comes to the actual porting work and the specific, quality and certification needs for other platforms, we try to get outside help for that.
So the core team of Sunblink will actually not really change because you have so many more platforms. Interesting. I've been really into the flower mechanic. I'm really a collectioner. I need every single flower. I counted now there's 21,000 possible flowers with all the double patterns. I want to eventually get them all, but I'm kind of worried that even though you released a lot of improvements on the mechanic, thank you so much because it's been so crazy, you plan to add flowers to every single biome, obviously, at the end, and more biomes to come probably. So do you see places where you could actually still improve some of the planting mechanics to still reduce that 1.5 hours time that we already spent when we'll have all 8 biomes of the flowers?
Yeah, so I think you can see some of that already at work with the Ghost Gleam release in the Spooky Swamp. We specifically said we're going to do fewer patches that have more plots in them. The intent is that when we released the patch-wide actions, we wanted to cut back on the overall number of patches that people had so that they weren't going to, all of the various patches in Gemstone Mountain, for instance. We've been working with engineering to see if we could actually kind of go back on some of the layouts in Seaside Resort and in Gemstone Mountain, and again, make it fewer, larger patches. There's a lot of data stuff that gets really, really touchy anytime we delete any data, and we would have to essentially delete all your flowers that were in one plot and then recreate them in another. That's considered exceptionally high risk from a stability perspective, from a save file perspective, and all of that. So we're extraordinarily cautious and wary of doing that. So it's going to take us a while to figure out the proper way. But our goal is to keep it similar to Spooky Swamp in the future, where you have a very small number of patches. Those patches are larger. It's easier to create the different breeding patterns that people have come up with. And then, as things continue, you'll see hopefully a very helpful new mechanic in 1.9 that's related to flowers. I know.
Is it the feature?
Yes, the feature is coming in 1.9.
The feature. Okay, cool.
It's happening, y'all. It's happening. So we're going to see how that works out. Essentially, what we're doing is we're giving people an option to, instead of continuing to have to invest every day, again and again and again and again, in some of the different maintenance requirements for the island, we're going to have people invest more upfront to permanently alleviate some of the maintenance overhead in certain ways. So we're going to see how this works. It's, a first try. We think it's going to be really helpful. We think it's going to work out. I know that in terms of my play style, and I think in terms of some of the, more fanatical power flower users, it's going to be really helpful. But we're, always all ears, of course, and continually trying to iterate and trying to release things like the patch-wide actions that do help alleviate that daily grind.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I was not expecting that you had so many plans. That's so cool. I'm so relieved. How do you choose who gets to be a friend, like Hello Kitty and Kuromi, and who gets to be just a visitor? Like Sanrio tells you what to do. Do you pick them? How does it work?
It's very collaborative with Sanrio. For our main cast characters, what we're looking for are people who have their own identity and worlds, and then other characters that are part of those worlds. So, for instance, Baku is an example of a very well-known character who has a solid identity, but Baku is part of Kuromi's world, right? So Baku can't be a main character. Baku has to be a visitor associated with Kuromi. Sanrio really wants to ensure that the friendships and associations between characters like Baku and Kuromi are maintained. So that's actually why you see cabin requirements like must be in the same biome as Kuromi, right? Like must live in the spooky swamp to be near Kuromi. So that's how we choose who winds up being a resident versus a visitor. But we're also looking at additional ways to include special characters. So Nisatama-san for Month of Meh was kind of our first attempt at that. We wanted to see what is it like to have characters that might be neither friends nor visitors, but might appear and enrich the game in kind of a new and different and exciting way. We've also been, tentatively throwing out ideas around that with, for instance, some of Retsuko's cast, because Retsuko's, whole world is quite different from a lot of the other Sanrio characters that we've included. And so what we hope to do is always kind of reflect the story and world of Sanrio in the actual game mechanics themselves, not just the quests and the stories we tell, but how you actually engage with those characters. Nisatama-san is, wild and fantastic and very weird and different. And so we wanted the mechanics for Nisatama-san to reflect that. So that's how we're hoping to include characters in additional ways in the future. But in terms of main characters and visitors, it's very much who is kind of the icon of their world and then who are supporting members of that world.
So we are soon going to be 2.0. And so what is the shift that's happening that you need to not be 1.10? For example, in some software, it's when you rewrite the whole code. I don't think that's the case for you guys. So is it a shift in the story, or what make you switch to 2?
All right, so I'm going to give you a very cryptic answer, which is that I play a ton of Genshin Impact, and I consider the product design for Genshin Impact to be phenomenal.
I played it a lot too, and now I'm not sure when the switch to something. So okay, this is cryptic. Okay, that's okay. So guys, in the wild speculation, go wild on this one. What interesting. Can you tell us the reason why the game had to be pushed like 1 month after it was originally supposed to be released?
There were kind of 2 factors in that. The first one was a marketing thing with Apple. They wanted this to be the headline for Arcade for that month. And there was a little bit of odd overlap in the month where we originally intended to release. And then the second one was just quality. We wanted kind of an extra 4 weeks. We had the game in a state that we were pretty confident in, but given the amount of investment we had, the level of promotion that Sanrio and Arcade were planning, we wanted to ensure that the game was as good as we could possibly make it in the time that we had. So us and Apple and Sanrio all sat down and we were like, hey, it's going to be better if we delay it a month. As I mentioned in the game dev story, we revised Sunshine Celebration to become Summer's End Celebration and did a few other small things to account for that timing shift. But for the most part, it was purely like a quality and marketing choice.
Good. And so were you happy that you did push it because you actually were able to make more?
Yeah, it was the right thing. And it also landed us right around International Day of Friendship, which felt very appropriate.
Oh, okay. I have a very technical question that maybe I should have asked in the Discord. Do I need to fertilize the event flowers for them being apparent, or because they cannot spawn new of them, I do not need to fertilize them? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so the spawn rate chance for an empty plot looks only at how many surrounding flowers have been fertilized. For every plot around an empty plot that has a flower that was fertilized, it adds a 10% chance of spawning. So if you have one fertilized flower near it, it's 10%. If you have two fertilized flowers near it, it's 20%, regardless of what the flower is. Doesn't matter if it's, an event flower, a regular flower, solid color pattern, none of that matters. The fertilizer purely is a rate increase.
At some point, I did not fertilize my event flowers, and so then I was like, maybe it will make some more chance. So thank you. And
there is a small chance if you don't fertilize for flowers to still kind of grow and populate. And of course, event flowers have a much higher chance of spawning, regardless of whether or not you fertilize. That's why people complain about them growing like weeds.
Yeah. Outside of their events, they should not spawn, right?
Just during the event, yes. Basically, during the event, any empty plot will have X% chance of growing an event flower, regardless of the fertilized plots around it.
I've seen people mentioning 1% or 2% for an ombre or for a new spawn of like a duplicate flower or things like that. Are you able to give us actual real numbers of what percentage of things could happen if I fertilize two things next to each other? Are they different based on what we're looking for?
So basically the options for what that flower could be go into a pool. So it's hard to identify pure chances, because if you've got, two solids that are breedable, right? Like if you had a coral and a white, you've got a high percentage chance of having the resulting flower be blush, even if you've got, three patterned hybrid flowers on one side, right? It's going to be weighted much more towards that simpler combination than it is the sort of fancier, rarer outcomes that you might get with having a bunch of compatible patterned flowers nearby. So it's a little bit tricky to say exactly, but the 1% to 2% is quite accurate in terms of the raw chance. If you have literally just a patterned flower, or two patterned flowers that you want to hybridize, you're going to be looking at about a 1% chance of getting that hybrid outcome. If you have a patterned flower, you're looking at about a 2-ish% of it duplicating itself, if that makes sense.
And for double patterns, so no, how do you call it? Secondary transfers, isn't that the official term?
Right, we use hybrids it takes the genetics from these two things and, goes in a non-default way, which is exciting.
And so do you have even less percentage than 1%?
No, that's the 1% chance, roughly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, to get that hybrid.
And so next are questions from my subscribers. So when will I get access to the building behind Pochacco? I guess we've been asked this question since 1.0. So
yep, the building behind Pochacco will come.
Oh, okay. Further down the line. Okay.
It will come. Plans are grand. The execution is slow.
They have 2 years of content written, so I hope that it's at least in those 2 years that you already have plans for this.
It is within the horizon of the current roadmap.
So we'll still wait for this one. And same for the greenhouse.
Not very, very soon, but quite soon.
Okay, so 1.9-ish. And the next question, when is Poron coming?
So Poron's only requirement that should be unfulfillable right now is the Friendship Festival items. So Friendship Festival is going to start with the 1.8.5 release. There's been a lot of gossip about when that's happening. Most of the gossip is quite accurate. Very soon.
There is the news article from Apple official that says 25th.
Oh, sweet. Great. I didn't know that had come out yet. There you go.
It is. Yeah, I found that this morning.
Perfect.
So, okay. And we have key art also from them. So
really? Did that come out for Friendship
Yes.
Oh, sweet. Yay.
I don't know when, but I saw that this morning. So we do
I see everything like weeks and weeks beforehand. So I don't actually know when anything goes live. So I accidentally spoil things all the time. People are like, why did you tell them that? And I was like, I thought it was out. Or vice versa. I'm like, this is a secret. And people are like, no, actually that was published like 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, oh, it's not a secret.
That should be so hard to navigate though. I would totally also reveal secrets because I'm very bad at these. So yeah.
Luckily, we've got a pretty chill community and a pretty chill game. So
we are so lucky about that, I think. And the fact that the game is so much about kindness and friendship, everything, I think it furthers this in the community too. So that's really perfect. And I feel that it's also the core values of Sunblink that you guys also give the trend of the community. So I think it's really so nurturing. We're so happy about that. So if you say, oh my God, I'm a big fat liar, people will never be mad because we know that you're so sweet usually and that you did not do it on purpose.
I was like, oh no, guys, I'm so sorry. I read our linear wrong. We use a database called Linear for all of our task tracking. And it's a very nice tool. It's much better than Jira for people who've used like Jira before. It's a lot more agile for a team of our size. It's perfect. But I'm very bad at filtering it. I always have to go to our producer and be like, can you create this filter for me so I can see exactly what actually got in the game? And I just did it wrong that day. And I felt so bad. I felt so bad. It's like, I'm sorry, guys. I know you're excited about this.
I was like, yes, I can finally do that. Oh, no. No, but that's
me
okay
too.
because it was still something good. So don't worry. So somebody asked about having Snoopy and Woodstock into the game, but I think it's only a license that Sanrio has in Japan, so it's like other collaboration characters that I don't think you'll guys be allowed to, right?
Yeah, everything that we do has to basically have a global universal license with Sanrio because of all of the different territories that we support. Basically, if anything is a one-off for a certain territory, it's basically off.
That's why the collaboration characters are not allowed because they have a very specific application.
Yeah, they have more specific or more tangly licensing agreements, and they're not flat out permanently never, ever. But at this point, there's so many other characters that it would just be a lot easier and would require a lot of like negotiation or additional contract work. It just doesn't make sense for us or Sanrio to invest in any of that at this point in time.
I totally understand. The question, when will we finish the Heart of the Island quest? I think it was said in the news article that it's the end of this arc. Is that the case?
The way we reference it internally is that this is like the end of A New Hope. So you've got, you know, your classic 3-arc story structure. This is the big moment at the end of kind of the first third of the overarching storyline that we have planned.
And so Big Challenges is not part of this 3-story arc. So, or was it?
We'll have to see.
Yeah, I mean, we need to bring him. Right. And I've seen people mentioning that now, sneakily, Kiki and Lala have an ability, but we can still not companion with them yet. So hopefully...
Weird. What's that about?
We will be able to bring them to the Heart of the Island because that would be so sad. But when you mentioned that every character needs to be maxed out and... what else did you say? Use a top hat in Big Challenges. You never mentioned Kiki and Lala, but I guess finally we'll be able to take them and probably together, right? And also they're now together in front of the event stand and not separated, so we'll bring everybody down there. Okay, somebody asked about other use of the game tickets that we have accumulated. Is it something that you want to see in the future, or you keep adding more things to the game, like mini games, so then we can use those tickets?
So we're planning on continuing to invest in the mini games, both improving the existing ones that we have and introducing new ones when it makes sense. Right now, because there's so many different ways to use the game tickets, and because there is not currently a way to adjust your odds of getting the very rare items, we don't want to further kind of muddy what game tickets are used for. We want people to be able to kind of dump them into those chances as much as they kind of want to. Soon, there will be something that helps facilitate people being able to have a slightly better chance at some of the ultra rare drops from those mini games. So what we're hoping to see is that people who have been maybe sitting on their game tickets will use that as an opportunity to be like, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to have a slightly longer play session. It's the weekend, or I'm on a plane or a road trip or whatever, and I'm going to do this new thing that's coming soon, and then go and get my, Nordic sofa at last.
Thank you so much for telling us this. And the last one is somebody asking why Swedish is not part of the many languages, like 14 different languages that you selected. How did you select the languages? How was it Apple who said you need to do that many?
Yeah, Arcade kind of has a standard set of languages that covers all of the territories that they're available in kind of the most economical way. So we basically just followed Arcade's guidance with that and said, yes, we will support everything that is your kind of standard collection of languages.
And you said you used to play, like, work on games that had like 6, and this time it's 14, so it's wild.
So there's this common term in localization called eFigs, which is basically like English, French, Italian, German, Spanish. And that's usually kind of the standard set. Like, people are always like, all right, we're just going to do eFigs. We're just going to do eFigs. Or we're going to do eFigs in Japanese or whatnot. So I'm very used to that as being the goal that you kind of like shoot for basic coverage. And that's obviously expanded a lot in recent years, and especially with Arcade. So lots of overhead. There's one more. You asked about yoga poses. So about the yoga poses disappearing. That was intentional. We had them for a Play Together promotion with Apple. But they will be back very, very soon.
Yeah, the question was that only during this phase, or I was under the impression that they will unlock them, and then we're so sad when they're gone. So, okay, they're coming back. That was it. Thank you so much for answering all my questions. I really appreciate your time and your generosity with this interview. And people in the audience, if you still have questions for Chelsea, write them down, and at some point we'll do something like that again, or I'll send her an email or whatever. She's been so adorable, and
thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, send in more questions, hang out with us on the Discord. Y'all are a great community. We're so happy to have you, and thanks for playing our game.